Good morning, Uplift Church. It is so good to see you all and to be back here. And I don't know, it's been a great 4-week trip. Has been awesome. But at the same time, there's 4 weeks of stuff just like in here. And Super Dave already told me don't get it all out in one Sunday. So we're going to spread it out over at least the next 2 weeks. But we're definitely excited to be with you all. And so thrilled to have people that not only can fill in, but that you love and that you trust. And we say, talk about the stage, that this is God's message point. This is where He's communicating out. And so it's not that we guard it, but that we're really cautious about who and what. And we'd been praying. And I remember 2 years ago, we was right over here, and I told David Smith, I said, hey, get ready, because in 2 years, my family's leaving for 4 weeks, and we're calling you up, buddy. And he's like, okay. But anyway, and then it was here. And then Randy, and then Dad, and it's just to be able to do that and then to be able to communicate God's love in such a powerful way. It was just so profound and at the same time relieving for us. The downfall is about when you go on a trip out west is that there is little to no cell phone signal. You'd think being flat and all that, you'd have plenty of it. You don't. In one conversation, we were in Page, Arizona, and I was outside. It's the only place I could get cell phone signal. And I was standing underneath a tree about this big trying to get a little bit of shade because it was 101 degrees outside. And I was trying to talk to my dad. He was asking me questions about the farm. And I had my phone like this. And if I switched ears, I lost him. So I had to stand like this while I talked to him. And you think that that's okay. But try to stand like this, for 12 minutes is how long our conversation went. Unreal. Same way we're trying to watch messages online. It was just coming and going. But as we watched them, and I told last week was the one we finally were able to watch beginning to end on live and join live with you. And it's just so good. And so I'm so glad that we've been able to hear from these different men and perspectives and from God's Word. And we're in this series now that we just started out talking about church. And last week, I don't know, I say it caught me off guard. I just thought it was just so good. David really drove the point home with these candles and about your light. You are a light. And I would dare say that we are all not necessarily even a good light. Sometimes we can even be a light in a negative way unto other people. We can be a light that people may see something that is not good about us. So one way or the other, we are a light. And you may say, no, I don't want to be a light. Don't look at me. But we are. We all are looking at each other and to try to be a light and an example. And you may say that you're not worthy. That you're not worthy to be a light. You're not worthy of God's love. You're not worthy to go to church. We have this idea that whenever we try to live for God, whenever we make it a point to come to church, read our Bible, and even pray, that it's going to kind of be smooth sailing, that we're going to have at least somewhat of an easier life. But church, that is not so. And to put it in perspective like this, so me and my family just came back from a 28-day vacation, a trip out west, that we had planned for 4 years. 4 years worth of planning. And in 4 years worth of planning, we had our route mapped out, our places we were going to stay. We didn't necessarily have the food planned out that we were going to eat, but we had a general idea. When we got somewhere, we had a general idea about what we were going to go. There's one thing that we didn't take into account. Problems. When you're going on a 7,000-mile trip around the country, you will have problems. Our first problem came and we were almost to Mount Rushmore. We were 20 minutes away. We're at the bottom of this mountain, getting ready to go to Mount Rushmore, and we was pulling this 20-foot camper, and every time you touch the brakes, the camper would do this, and my entire family would do this. And Abney is my 17-year-old. She's in the back. She said, Daddy, you got to do something. I'm going to break my neck. Well, come to find out, it was because of one of our brakes in the camper. 3 hours worth of troubleshooting. We got that figured out. I finally just clipped it, so instead of having 4 brakes on the camper, we now got 3. All right, we're ready to get to Mount Rushmore. We were supposed to have got there around noon. We got there at 6:30. 6:30. Other different problems. Our vehicle overheated. We got into South Dakota. We stopped at a rest stop because the girls brought quarters. They wanted to be able to put quarters in a machine and get a drink and snacks and all that. So I stopped in. They went to go get that. And I was just, every time I stop, I'm looking over the camper. I'm looking over the truck. Let's make sure that everything is good. And I see a tire that's like, it's went bad. And I'm looking at it. And she's like, what's wrong? I was like, this tire's bad. She's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I guess we're going to change it. So here we're changing it. So then I found a Tractor Supply that had trailer tires. And Amanda's talking to her mom on the phone. And me and Abney come out. We're carrying a buggy. And we got 3 trailer tires in the buggy. She said, where are you going to put those? And I said, well, what's good to have a luggage rack if you're not going to put anything in it? So the entire trip, we've got 3 tires ratchet strapped on top of our car. Other different problems. We're in Page, Arizona. The temperature is in 100 degrees. Our AC went out. AC went out in an aluminum metal camper in 100 degrees. Do you understand the problem here? Man, we were all dying. She's like, why am I sweating? And there's just different problems. Thought we had the trailer and all the tires figured out, and we were getting ready to leave to come back home. We had 1,700 miles to go. Again, I'm doing a walkthrough around the camper, and I was like, we got another bad tire. I'd already replaced the other 3. The bad tires were on top of the Suburban. She's like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm going to find another Tractor Supply. So what do? I go buy another one. So we put it on there. And it's just, problem. And you'd think that 4 years of planning, you wouldn't have any issues. So why do we think that in our life that we're not going to have any issues? With our marriage, issues at work, issues with our health? Just because that we end up having like issues, just because we're faced with problems, doesn't always mean that you're doing something wrong. At our very best, we will still have some sort of issue. The thing about it is what do you do when an issue comes? So we're at a truck stop in South Dakota, jacking up the camper to replace a tire, and the whole time, me and Abney, we're just grinning. Here we are. We're down on the ground, and we're jacking up the camper, and all this, and we're changing the tire. We got smiles on. We're just smiling. We're going to the Tractor Supply, and we're buying these 3 tires and these wheels, and they came mounted and everything, and we're going to the checkout. And then we got to the checkout, and that lady, she said, hey, do you have a number with us? And I was like, yeah, I sure do. She said, you ain't from around here, are you? Nope, we ain't. Just smiling going on. See, many times in our life when it comes to church and we have problems, or when it comes to family have problems, or marriage and have problems, we'll quit. But when you're 4,000 miles away from home and you have a problem, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, you just address it and then you go on. It's not, you can't do quantum leap and just say, okay, let's go home. No, we're going to have to go through that. And see, what we want to do today is that we're going to look at something amazing that happened. If you have your Bibles, please look with me in Acts chapter 15, because we're going to look at an issue. And somebody asked, are we going to have school today? Yes, we are, and I'm going to write on this. But we're going to look at an issue today because we all have issues. And church, you can apply this to your church. You can apply this to your work. You can apply this to your life. You can apply this to every facet, every area of your life you can apply this to, because there's going to come some sort of issue. Some sort of issue. Now, if I were to ask you in your life right now, David Smith led this off great. You had a time of personal reflection to examine your life. So I want to ask you this question as we dive into this. Are you perfect? Are you perfect? If you are, I would love to interview you after church. All right, Bryce, we're going to hit you up. I'm just kidding. What we want to do is that sometimes we look at our lives and we were just saying right now, okay, I'm not perfect. So let me ask you another question. Do you hold other people to a higher standard than you hold yourself? If we know that we're not perfect, then shouldn't we expect other people to be not perfect? See, the issue is sometimes we hold other people to a higher standard than we do ourselves. We hold them to be a perfect pedestal. They have to be perfect, even though you may not be. In Acts chapter 15, we look at the church, and this is the amazing thing about what happened. Acts chapter 15, verse 1, it says, "Some men came down from Judea and began to teach the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the custom prescribed by Moses, you cannot be saved." So there's a problem. And the problem is with the church. And the church wasn't just one church. The church was many churches. And I know that my handwriting is not the best, but I'll do my best. Many churches. There's many of them. And now there's a problem. Because they're saying, in order for you to be a Christian, you have to convert to Judaism. And to put it really simple, in order to be a Christian, in order to be saved, you have to have surgery, all you men. You have to be circumcised. It doesn't matter if you're 6 years old or 82. You have to be circumcised. And that's what they're saying. How would you like to have that now? Thank you for joining Uplift Church. We'll schedule your surgery for next Tuesday at 4:30. It's outpatient. I'll tell my wife, you know what? I'm going to sit in the car. I'll wait. You and the kids. I'm good. So with this, there was a problem. Here was a problem, a big problem. And I know that this is going to seem scattered, but there's a problem that they have. There is a problem. And they have to address it. People are coming down the teaching about this problem. You have to have surgery in order to be saved. You have to convert to Judaism in order to be a Christian. And so this is what happened. Verse 2 says, "But after Paul and Barnabas had engaged them in serious argument and debate." Now, when you hear that, there's talking about the Bible, and it's really putting it nicely. Serious argument and debate. The church arranged for Paul and Barnabas and some others of them to go up to the apostles and elders in Jerusalem concerning this controversy. Now, how do you think that this conversation went over? I remember hearing my parents, they were having a discussion, they always called it. And I was like, man, why are y'all fighting? They said, we're not fighting, we're having a discussion. A discussion. It's like, well, sometimes, it seems like you might get a little red. Like, well, sometimes we do get a little red, but we're having a discussion. So how do you think that this very serious debate, what do you think that it looked like? I do not want you to raise your hand, but how many of you have ever been in a meeting, whether it be a family meeting, a business meeting at church, a meeting at work, people get their voices raised up, there's red, there's people sometimes even stand up. So I'm going to put this lightly like the Bible put, it was heated. It was a very heated discussion, very serious. And what they're debating on is this issue. This issue. So there's many churches, they have a problem, and it's heated. What do we do when we are faced with the issue, when we're faced with a problem, and it's heated? When it's heated, it's usually something very personal to you. When it's heated, it's something that you really care about. When it's heated, it doesn't affect just you. It's going to affect more than just you. Maybe even your family. I was underneath the camper, or laying on hot pavement trying to fix this brakes, and everything was just, it was just so hot. And I remember I was like, Lord, I'm going to do this with a smile on my face. But if you could just send a little sunshine and shade my way, that would be so nice. I got no shade. But I did have a wife who offered me a water. Had the potential to be so heated. So heated. Now I want you to think about some things that you may be dealing with in your life. Or maybe something you got going on at work. Oh, and there's some heatedness there. Look at the things going on in a controversy around in our country about presidents now and former, about insurance, about the use of pronouns, race. There's some very heated discussions about this. Now, what did they do when it was heated? What did they do when it got heated? They didn't get nowhere. What did they do? Well, they were sending them up to the leaders. They were going to have a organized business meeting. Look at this, verse 4. They were going to Jerusalem. When they arrived in Jerusalem, I want to pause right there just for a minute. All right, so where this issue was happening at was in a place that they brought this down. Antioch. That's an H. Antioch. You know what? I can do better than that. Antioch. They had to travel. We just got done traveling. So they had to travel to Jerusalem. Church, it was 300 miles. 300 miles. That's like you leaving Uplift Church and going to Nashville. Nashville from Uplift Church is 283 miles. They didn't have planes. They didn't have vehicles. You either walked or you might be able to have an animal that you could ride on. 300 miles. How long do you think that took them to make a 300-mile trip on a horse? It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. If you traveled hard on a horse, traveled hard, you could do it in about a week. The issue was so serious and it's been so heated, they sent their people 300 miles away to have a business meeting. Now, whenever something affects us, how far are we willing to go to see it through? When it comes to you and your spouse, how far are you willing to go with your spouse to work through an issue? How far are you willing to work through your issue at work? How far are you willing? How much are you willing to put into it? I mean, 300 miles, that's a big day. That's a big day. Whew. How far are you willing to go? All right. Look what happened. So when they arrived in Jerusalem, they were welcomed by the church. Just pause right there for a minute. They went to Jerusalem. In church, there was a welcome there. A welcome. Why was there a welcome? Because this is other believers gathered together. And it doesn't matter what name or denomination the church is. If they preach Jesus, we should welcome them. There's going to be different opinions as you're getting ready to see here. We all got different opinions. We all have different opinions on how to spend our money, how to dress our kids, and what kind of vehicle we should drive. If you ask some people, they are die-hard Ford. You either drive a Ford or nothing. There's other people that wouldn't even ride in a Ford. They're Chevrolet all the way. You got some people that won't do any of that, and they're all about the Dodge. You got other people that are like, hey, why do you drive a gasoline? You need a diesel. Real men drive diesels. And so we have all these different ideas and opinions. So where's this welcome come in? The welcome comes when we can look at everyone through the eyes of Jesus. See, Jesus is what connects us to everybody else. But wait a minute, what about the problem? See, Jesus should trump everything. Jesus. I'm going to love you regardless of what kind of vehicle you drive, what kind of house you drive or live in, or what kind of clothes you wear. Jesus connects us. So they were welcomed by the church, the apostles and the elders, and they reported all that God had done with them. But some of the believers from the party of the Pharisees stood up and they said, it is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. There was an exclamation point there. That's why I slapped it. Exclamation point. It's already getting heated. There's a group of people that got together and said, hey, I got your back, you got mine. They had preconceived notions whenever this meeting. Hey, we're going to get up, we're going to be loud. They will hear our voice. So right off the bat, hey, we'd like to welcome everybody to today's first ever business meeting of the church. They immediately jumped up. We think this is what needs to happen. And there's a problem, church. This group of people, they got up and they said, this is it. It is necessary. Verse 6 says, the apostles and elders assembled to consider this matter. The problem here is your eyes in your life, if you're not careful, will ruin you. Well, if I just had this, if I do this, well, I think we ought to do this, and I think this. You need to be very careful with the eyes in your life. Very careful. So these so many people are here and they're dealing with these issues. And church, I want you to understand this as we continue on. We're not perfect. The church is made up of imperfect people. We are all exactly the same in the eyes of God. We are sinners saved by grace. That's it. And what's so powerful about this is the way that David Smith brought that out last week, is that we have a light in us because we've been saved. You have a light in you. The thing about it is what are people going to see? Are they going to know you for just the problems? Are they going to know you because you get heated and red in the face every time there's an issue? Or are they going to know you by the way you welcome others? So they begin to have this meeting and begin to share. Look at verse 7. After there had been much debate. Much debate. Guess where they got? Nowhere. Nowhere. After much debate. It went on. After much debate, this went on. Peter stood up. You know, we know that Peter was a leader. Peter stood up and said to them, "Brothers, you are aware that in the early days God made a choice among you, that by my mouth the Gentiles will hear the gospel message and believe. And God, who knows the heart, testified to them by giving the Holy Spirit, just as also He did to us." Now, what Peter did here was take up for anybody that was not a Jew. You can look back in Acts chapter 9 and 10, and Peter had an issue. He thought that Jesus was just for the Jews until he had a vision about unclean animals. And Peter said, "Lord, I've not ate anything that's unclean. I am holy. I am pure." And Jesus said, "Do not call anything I have made unclean." From that point on, Peter preached to Gentiles, Jews. It didn't matter who you were. Peter preached. So he's standing up and he's taken up, hey, this is for everybody. Salvation is for everyone. And look at verse 10. He made no distinction between us and them, cleansing their hearts by faith. And you know what this does? I love this, because this puts us all onto the same playing field. It doesn't matter who you are, your age, your background, your race, your sex. It doesn't matter. We are all on the same playing field because we have been saved by faith. Now then, why are you testing God by putting a yoke on the disciples' necks that neither our ancestors nor we have been able to bear? On the contrary, we believe we are saved through the grace of the Lord Jesus in the same way they are. I love this. So Peter got up and he standing up and he said, "Guys, listen. Why are we doing this? You remember you, Sam? You remember how you failed? Yeah, we're trying to place this same burden upon them. And we couldn't live it. Our ancestors couldn't live it." And here's the part where we often struggle in life. Is that we have a level that we hold ourselves at. We'll hold ourselves to a level. We all said this morning that, hey, we're not perfect. So we would probably say, you know what? I'm somewhere right here. I've got room to grow, but I've come a good ways. But then other people, instead, we'll hold them up here. When they mess up. And we get so angry. We'll have a bigger problem and a heated discussion because we're holding them to a higher standard. Exactly what Peter's saying. Why are you putting a yoke on them that we've never been able to bear, nor our ancestors? We need to be very careful that we don't hold people to a higher standard than what we are living ourselves. Instead, we should hold people as equal. We shouldn't look down on them. We should welcome them all. Jesus leveled the playing field. We shouldn't change it. So in this discussion, as it's going on, Peter's saying, this is the way that we think. Well, then you had verse 12. It says, then the whole assembly fell silent. I love this. What did Tony talk about earlier? I asked David Smith this earlier. How much silence do you have in your life? Now, I'm going to have a moment of real honesty with you. Out west, there was very little cell phone reception. So what do you do when you go to the bathroom? I mentioned this to David Smith. He said, well, it sounds like it's a pretty quick trip. I didn't realize the blessing in the silence. See, I'm oftentimes finding silence in my life, and I'll put my cell phone somewhere else. But then, I'll hear a ding. And the whole time I'm trying to have silence, the back of my mind is going, I wonder what that ding is. I'll just check it right fast. 15 minutes later, I've just completely lost all train of thought, all in my silence. Well, they fell silent when they heard Paul and Barnabas, and look at what they were doing here. So this is Paul and Barnabas. They're describing all the signs and wonders God had done through them among the Gentiles. And the reason why everybody was so fascinated on this is because they fell silent listening to the stories. Have you ever been sucked into a story so much, it's just like time it was gone. It's just gone. It was just so many signs and wonders. Just so many signs and wonders, story after story after story about how God had done so many great things. And they're just, it's like a grandparent telling an amazing story to their grandkids, and they're just sucked in. Verse 13. After they stopped speaking, notice that right now we still got a problem. We've been dancing around this. There's still a problem. It's been heated discussion. There was a little bit of silence from Paul and Barnabas, and they're speaking about the signs and wonders, and what they're really talking about is how God has done so many great things through their hands for all nations. They still have the issue. They still have the issue. I'm not sure how many hours this went on, but everybody's sharing, everybody's talking, everybody's sharing their opinion. In church, on many ideas and many thoughts and many convictions you have, you can continuously share. You're going to have so many different thoughts and ideas. You and your spouse are going to have different thoughts and ideas about your family and your marriage and the direction that should go. You're going to have different thoughts and ideas about how to raise your kids. At work, you're going to have different thoughts and ideas about how things should get done. How many times have you said, well, if that was my job, or here's what the boss needs to do, or we think that we know best. But church, anytime that we do that, we're putting all the focus and all the attention on yours, your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions. And so this debate just kept going on, and everybody's sharing their thoughts and their ideas until verse 13. After they stopped speaking, James responded. Brothers, listen to me. James. Now, James was somebody very, very important. Because James didn't come along to be a Christian, a follower, until much later in life. Actually, much later even in Jesus' ministry. Because James had a problem. He was very slow to come to follow it. Because James saw Jesus as something else. James was the brother to Jesus. James here trumps everybody, gathers their attention, and he says, listen to me. And there's an exclamation point on there. So he really got their attention. And he says in verse 14, Simon, this time about Peter, has reported how God first intervened to take the Gentiles a people for his name. So what James, first thing he does is that he addresses how everybody is equal in the eyes of God, and he refers to Peter in his vision from Jesus about how the message, the gospel, salvation is for everyone. And then he says something profound. Verse 15, and the words of the prophets agree with this. As it is written, after these things I will return and rebuild David's fallen tent. I will rebuild its ruins and set it up again, so the rest of humanity may seek the Lord, even all the Gentiles who are called by my name, declares the Lord, who does these things, known from long ago. Here James is quoting two prophets in the Old Testament, Amos and Isaiah. So he's referring back to the Old Testament, scrolls that everybody there was familiar with. And then in verse 19, he does something. Therefore, in my judgment. So what James is doing here is that he's saying all this is coming to an end. In my judgment. No, watch what happens. In my judgment, we should not cause difficulties for those among the Gentiles who turn to God, but instead we should write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from eating anything that has been strangled, and from blood. In less than a minute, James takes all the debate, all the problems, all the heated discussion, and in about a minute, summarizes everything into 3 points. We're going to tell them, stay away from idols, sexual immorality, and from eating things that's been strangled from blood. That's it. All the heated discussion. A 300-mile journey that got took care of in about a minute. When James spoke, everybody listened. James was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. And here, he's calling all this attention. Instead, we're not going to make it difficult. We're going to make it as simple as we possibly can. And church, this was a burden that it was on my heart to start Uplift Church with. We should make it difficult, as easy as we possibly can. And sometimes even in the simplicity, we get complicated. I mean, look at it now. It started out in a basement, and here we are in a former Colonial Downs / car lot building. Simple. Simplicity. And this is what James was talking about. We're going to stay away from all these things. So he got rid of it all. Here was their response in verse 22. It says, then the apostles and the elders with the whole church decided to select men who were among them and send them to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas, Judas called Barsabbas, Silas, both leading men among the brothers. They wrote this letter to be delivered by them. So all they did, all this, it was erased. They got rid of all the debate, all the heatedness. I can just see Peter now having red face and like somebody cutting him off and be like, I'm going to meet you in a parking lot. And just seeing Peter getting aggravated. And don't you sometimes get that way at work? Sometimes don't you just need to get in the silence at home? So James, he cleared out everything. In my judgment, and all they did was 3 things. And they wrote it in a letter. That was it. They selected men to take this letter out to the churches to disperse and read it. Church, that was it. They didn't quit church. They didn't give up on each other. They didn't allow the problem to trump their relationship with Jesus and each other, which is the most important thing. There's 2 things as Christians we're supposed to love. Can anybody tell me what that is? This is classroom time. 2 things you're supposed to love. Do anybody tell me who that is? What that is? God and others. That's it. 2 things. Ain't you glad I'm not an English teacher? Who caught that, Melanie? God and others. Church, that's it. And we're going to put this real simple. We're in this series right now talking about the church. This is the next timeline as things go on, as we're seeing in the New Testament. The church. Do not think that Uplift Church for a moment is perfect. We are not. But there are two things that we strive to do. This. Church, this. Whenever something is in your life and it gets elevated above this, you need to tread lightly and with caution. Tread lightly and with the uttermost caution. Because here they had a heated debate, heated discussion. It went on for many hours, and it got taken care of in just a few moments by the words of James, saying, in my judgment, we should not make it difficult. We should not make it difficult. So they wrote the letter, a little 3-point message, sent it out, and they went on. Church, we need to remember a few things about this issue in which they were faced here. The number one thing that we need to remember, regardless of what issue it is, whether it's at work, let me ask you this. Let's have a moment of participation. How many of you have ever had an issue at work? Will you raise your hand? You've had an issue at work. Look at us. All right, you put your hands down. How many of you have ever had an issue that you had to deal with? I didn't say it was heated, but you had an issue in your marriage. How many of you have ever had an issue with your family or extended family? We're going to have issues. We're going to have problems. And there's a reason why. And we need to understand this before we can move on. Is that we are all sinners. Every last one of us. Did I spell that right? Yes, we're all sinners. We are sinners. But there's a difference. There's a difference. We are sinners. That trumps this. We are, man, we are saved sinners. Yes, but I'm a saved sinner. In church, we need to look at other people as saved sinners too. Are they going to mess up? Yes. Are we going to mess up? Yes, because we're imperfect people. We are. But nothing should get elevated above this. This is why we need to respect each other. This is why we need to love others. Whenever you have some issue on your heart, whenever you have some issue that comes up in your life, when it becomes your main focus above loving God and loving people, tread lightly, because it's all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. And there's some times that we don't act very Christian-like. There's times that we're not fit to be around. I don't remember what I did, but I remember making Amanda so angry, so mad. She said, I can't even look at you right now. So you know what I did? I didn't stay around for the heatedness. I gave her some time to be silent, and I was silent. Church, I have no idea what you may be facing in your life right now. But could you imagine what would happen if we could go through life? Whenever we're facing issues, that we could look at, you know what? I'm still saved. You know what? I can still love God and love others through this. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to accept everything. That's different. We can love on people and not condone their sin. That's not what we're saying. But we are saying that whenever an issue is trying to trump everything in your life. It's trying to rise above this. You need to tread lightly. It's all about Jesus. Now, there's another part in this because of what they were facing and what they were doing. It's all about Jesus. But when it comes to issues, we must be patient. They were patient, weren't they? They were patient. They had to travel 300 miles. Oh, they were patient. If you came to me and said, hey, your issue, that you and your wife were having, y'all going to have to ride a horse 300 miles to go see the counselor. I'd be like, no, it ain't happening. We're working this out on our own. You got to be patient. Remember that most things that you get out of life are going to be determined by what you put in it. You've got to be patient. If there's an issue at church, if there's an issue in your family, there's an issue at work, you must be patient. Because nothing should trump loving God and loving others. Nothing should trump that. So you must be patient. What was the outcome? James put it into simple terms. What was the outcome? Oh, they had a great outcome. I love this. And it pleased everybody, especially the men. Will you look with me at verse 30? It says, then, being sent off, they went down to Antioch. So they had to travel back. They went to Jerusalem. Now they had to travel back 600 miles on some sort of livestock or walking. Wow! The issue was so big, it was a 600-mile round trip. And they came back and they read this letter. And I love this. So, being sent off, they went down to Antioch, and after gathering the assembly, so they gathered everybody together and they delivered the letter. When they read it, look at this. When they read it, they rejoiced because of its encouragement. They had three things. They rejoiced because of this encouragement. And in my mind, I'm thinking, especially the men. Because now, no longer do you have to have surgery in order to join the church. Look at the outcome. What outcome could there be in our lives if we, whenever we're facing problems, we don't elevate the problem above Jesus. But instead, what if we just took our problems to Jesus? Just took it to Him. I'm not sure where we were at, somewhere in near the Black Hills of South Dakota. I remember laying on the camper, and I said, Lord, I have no idea what I'm doing or how to fix this issue. But I have 5 ladies in that Suburban counting on me to show me what to do. I just laid there. I wasn't moving. It was hot. Sweat everywhere. I was just laying there. Lord, I don't know what to do. I just kept laying there. Amanda came out to check on me. She said, did you figure anything out? I didn't snap at her. That wouldn't have done anything to the heatiness, would it? I didn't get hateful. I said, no, babe, I'm just figuring things out. Like, all right, let's think about this. Thought a lot about my dad and what he might try to have me to troubleshoot. There's no cell phone signal, by the way, so you can't do that. You can't even YouTube anything, so you can't fix nothing. So here I am. Lord, just show me what to do. And I was just walking through this. All right, if I was my dad, what would he tell me to do? Well, Dad would say, all right, let's just walk backwards. I'm like, all right. So like, let's do this. Let's do this. All right, I'm going to figure out which axle it's on, left or right. Okay. And then I can figure out which wiring it is. All right. And I remember I got to the point I was so excited. I got in the car and I was grinning. And Amanda went, you fixed it, didn't you? And I went, I think I did. Church, we made it 1 mile. 1 mile. We went to stop at a red light, and I was just easing on the brakes, and I was just going, and all of a sudden it started doing the, and Abby in the back's going, Daddy! I know. So then we stopped at a church parking lot, and they must have been having vacation Bible school. There was cars coming and going everywhere, but here we are in this church parking lot. And I went, all right, Lord, I've got one more wire I can cut. In Jesus' name, I cut this, and it was the right one. My whole point is that our attitude, whenever we're around people, our problems are always going to be there. In church, they're going to come and they're going to go. You're going to be faced with different problems this week than you were last week. You're going to be faced with different problems in your retirement than you were early in your marriage. We're always going to be faced with some kind of problem, but what do? We just deal with it. We'll take it to Jesus. We'll do what we can. It should never elevate above Jesus, but take them to Jesus. Take them to Jesus. Church, I don't know what you may have going on in your life right now, but you may be having something right now going on in your life that you've not been handling it in the right manner. It consumes you. It's affecting your relationships. It's affecting your work. It could be an issue at work. It could be certain people at work. We've got these problems. Church, could you imagine what would happen if we could take this to Jesus? Take this to Jesus. Just take it to Jesus. We've got a picture of us in Yellowstone. We're at the entrance. This is a grand, big entrance of this Roosevelt entrance, and there's our Suburban with 3 tires strapped on top. We just smile and go on. We just deal with it. Because you know what? We was on a trip of a lifetime with family that I love so dearly. 4 years into planning, 20 years of marriage. So we just kept it in perspective. We gave it to Jesus. Done all that we could. And let God do the rest. Church, is there something on your plate? Something in your life? And you're facing the problem. You've had other discussions and it may have been heated. Maybe you've talked about it so many times at work that you're tired of talking about it. Church, I think it's time that we take all this to Jesus. We realize that people are not the problem. We just take it to Jesus. Is there something in your life right now that you need to take to Jesus? James said, therefore, in my judgment, this is what we should do. He simplified everything in the terms. Church, could you imagine what would happen if we could take things to Jesus? Keep it in perspective and just take it to Jesus. Church, I'm not sure what you've got going on in your life, but nothing is worth elevating above your relationship with Jesus. If it's affecting your relationship with God and if it's affecting your relationship with others, it's time to take it to Jesus. Regardless if it's marriage, if it's family, if it's church, if it's work-related, whatever it is. Whatever that is, take it to Jesus. We're going to do something that's a little bit old-fashioned. And if you would go ahead and play that next song. And during this time, you'd always have this in the closing remarks that the eyes in our life would subside as we lift up the name of Jesus. In His name we pray. Amen. Would you take a moment and give God some awesome praise?